I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. Yes, indeed. What's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like right here on Black Power Media. I'm Jared Ball. Happy to be back with you, joined, of course, by Geechee Y'all and Brother Diallo. Good morning, fellas. Good morning to everybody. Greetings.
Good morning. Good
How's
morning.
everybody doing?
Making it. Rough morning.
I'm well.
Right on. We made it through another successful parent drop off, student drop off, which is always dicey. I'm never sure how the day's gonna go when you start dealing with other parents and the traffic and all of that. It gets real. Parents get real shady. Anyway, good job yesterday on your platform, Geechee, hosting us for this discussion of Malcolm X raising up on his birthday. Please, if you haven't seen that, we invite others to go check it out. And in fact, I'll make sure to put the link in the show description for this show. I do want one quick thing before we move anywhere. I do want to inform folks that just like this fly mug I have here and this fly t-shirt I have, I can't wait for payday because over here at blackpowermedia.org, the store has expanded. So I just wanted to big up the folks helping us in the background with this project and to let folks know there's a lot more merch people can get to support the channel and help us grow. We're about to announce a big project we're engaged in supporting. So all the support we can get helps us. This fly backpack I'm about to get, and the remix mug, that's what I'm about to get on Wednesday when I get paid. And there's another backpack too that I'm about to get. The Remix Morning Show backpack. That joint's gonna be hot right there. So we got hoodies, different t-shirts, bags, all these different bags.
Wait, was that a baby outfit at the bottom? Look like go down.
Is it?
Oh no.
No. It's a hoodie. It's a hoodie. So I think you know there are women's fitted shirts. I don't think we got onesies yet.
Oh.
But that's next. So anyway, just want to let folks know to do that, and please support if you can. Get yourself some fly gear, and so on and so forth. So I know I got a number of things I wanted to get to this morning. In the next hour, Dr. Todd Steven Burroughs is going to join us for to talk about the book reviews he posted just recently at imixwhatilike.org. Thanks, Geechee, for sending it. I've been reading Marc Lamont Hill's co-authored book that Dr. Burroughs wrote an essay about. So we'll be getting into that next hour with him. There's a lot to say there. There's a couple other things I wanted to get to, but let me ask the two of you if there was something you wanted to start us off with this morning or bring up or whatever. Yeah.
Well, the only article after we finish with that first article, a Jamu's article kind of help us get back together because that first article that we're gonna read it's not good at all.
It's got a couple issues with it.
Yeah.
Okay. You know what? I have to admit I didn't get to the Jamu's article, so I'll let you lead us through that. And if Diallo, if you don't mind, I'm gonna mute you real quick. Is that the noise coming from your end, Geechee?
Oh, that's probably mine.
That's not me.
Oh, okay. Oh, my bad. I thought it was you thumbing through the book or something, Diallo. My bad. I was like, he's digging deep in that joint.
But go with your article first, and then we'll go with the Jamu.
Okay. All right. Okay. Right on. Good. So I brought this up. I think it was on the remix where I brought. I can't remember where I brought this up actually, but a persistent issue that I'm having. Just in general, is that as I continue to argue, we're living in a time where more of the issues that plague us can be brought up and discussed in pop culture and mainstream media than at any other time. But the frame around which, or the frame being used for those discussions is increasingly narrowed and dragged to the center, if not fully to the right. And in a discussion we were having yesterday on By Any Means Necessary with Sean and Jackie, I tried to make this point about the vacuum into which much of the Black and left analysis has been able to step post the assassination of Malcolm X and others, giving room for analyses to breathe that would not be given such room, particularly in the consciousness of Black people, were it not for the vacuum that was created by that assassination and others and other things happening. And one of those is that the analysis we're getting in response to Buffalo in particular, I'm feeling like are often in certainly in the mainstream, and even from voices that I would consider, or some at least would have considered, to offer something different from the mainstream, are doing the same thing. And in particular, specifically, I'm talking about how everything now is being blamed on Tucker Carlson, the Republicans, and Fox News as a frame for a popular analysis in response to Buffalo. And unfortunately, though, you know, I felt like this was happening over time anyway. Dr. Keeanga-Yamahtta Taylor's new piece in the New Yorker is doing a lot of the same thing. And for me, this is unfortunate in particular because I came to know of Dr. Taylor's work primarily initially through her presentations with wearemany.org, which I don't even know if it's still up, but a socialist website she was doing. And I thought, you know, her overt socialism and socialist politics from the context of Black liberation were a benefit. And I was, you know, very much interested in trying to build with her and see her career, you know, blah, 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 blah. And I do think that she's gone a little bit too far into the mainstreaming of academia and punditry, and in what is purporting to be the new alternative and a new left, she's found a lot of space to do so. But this article, I think, does a lot to demonstrate the problem that I have with what's going on. So, American Racism in the Buffalo Shooting is the title of the piece. And as I've just highlighted here throughout, it does a lot of, again, the same too easy blaming of the right wing. There's zero emphasis or discussion of anything from the Democratic Party as having anything to do with this. So it just leaves the unstated but implicitly argued, you know, it leaves the reader with no other conclusion than we have to continue to support the Democratic Party because they're the true bulwark of an alternative. So she writes here, the Fox News personality Tucker Carlson has helped popularize the ideology of the Great Replacement, that is, and it has dovetailed seamlessly into the rhetoric of the Republican Party. So that's essentially what she's saying, that the right wing has popularized this hostility, and young people like the shooter in Buffalo have picked up on it. And in reading his manifesto, she more or less makes the conclusion that this is a right-wing Republican, Tucker Carlson, Fox News type of problem. In a search of the archive post beginning in 2021, where she's looking at, let's see, the shooter rationalized it. She's looking at the social media of the shooter. The word immigrant appears 12 times, replacement 18 times, replacers 22 times, blacks and the N-word each appear 100 times.
So Jared,
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
So when I was reading that one, she critiquing the writing style of the shooter. She calling him sophomoric. Then she's doing word counts, but I'm curious if somebody did a word count on how many times she says Trump or Republican in her article, because it's like almost every line Republican, Trump article, you know. So that's
a good. I mean, that would be a good way of sort of putting some, I guess, some social science to the argument I'm making. But yeah, that's a good point. Mm-hmm. There have been almost 200 shootings involved in the last 4 years, involving at least 4 victims, shot or killed, according to the Gun Violence Archive. Again, most of which she attributes, if not all of it, to the rhetoric of the right. What other races? And then, she's quoting the manifesto here again, saying, and this is actually, I made the note here because this is where I feel like I just saw my argument around buying power showing up again, but in the context of a white supremacist, because he writes here, what other race is given trillions of dollars of white taxpayer money to succeed, but yet fails and asks for more? So again, it's the idea that Black people are poor because we're financially illiterate, and then just go back begging for more. Elijah Cummings is so sort of to your point, Geechee. The one reference, if I'm not mistaken, to a specific Democratic congressman was the late Elijah Cummings, who was depicted here as being again a progressive response to the world created or championed by Trump. But yes, it's true that Trump was making a racist statement when arguing that Cummings' district is disgusting and rat and rodent infested mess. If he spent more time in Baltimore, maybe he could help clean up the very dangerous and filthy place. It's not that I'm arguing that Trump is to be commended or given credit for being right, but there is some truth in the argument that Elijah Cummings' presence as the Democratic representative of that region of Baltimore was not able, even if he was trying his best, we could just say then, give him the benefit of the doubt, he was not able to make a meaningful material impact on the lives of his constituents. Anyway, so this is just, it's there's more of this. Again, the Trump references, the defense of the 1619 project, juxtaposing it to Trump's 1776 commission, which of course was racist. There's no denying that. But again, it's the purpose of calling him and the right racist is to project and promote a popular liberal project and left, nominally left-wing party. Reference to the Manhattan Institute, of course, which I've talked about here before as being the right-wing white supremacist backing of certainly Black folks like McWhorter. But again, the focus is them as the issue here. The right wing, the Republican Senator Wendy Rogers is brought up. The conservative hysteria that seeks to envelop American history in a shroud of innocence and ignorance is the problem. So again, what we don't get, and then I'll wrap here, is what we don't get is any meaningful engagement with the fact that the Democratic Party, at minimum, has had equal control over the levers, nominally at least, over the levers of power over the last at least 10 to 20 years or more, if not forever, and has not been able to come up with any meaningful response, and in fact often works against meaningful responses. We don't hear anything about the 1033 program or AFRICOM. How are the weapons, or the gun manufacturing in this country that of course is the leadership in the world of gun manufacturing? We don't hear anything about that, of course, because that is supported by the Democratic Party and the liberal establishment as well. Dems have allowed it for bloated class sizes and underpaid teachers in terms of educating people and militarization of schools, even under Obama. This is so. If there was ever going to be hope that there was going to be education given to ameliorate the whatever white supremacy still exists, and to maybe lessen the potential of an impact, we're not going to hear about that. We're not going to get to a discussion of that. We're not going to hear about, we're not hearing about the role of the greatest inside trader, Nancy Pelosi, and stuff like that, and how they're funding and increasing funding the military and the police, promoting. It's the Democratic Party that's often associated with the media images that encourage a devaluing of Black humanity, et cetera, and so forth. So there's so much more, including the PTSD from all the wars that Democrats support that already existing white supremacists will find expanded in terms of their time in the military, and then the PTSD after the military encourages them to act on it, whether through suicide or aggressively against partners or the rest of us. So anyway, let me stop there. That's basically my point, and the concern that I have, given particularly Dr. Taylor's positioning as a popular and competent academic with a true left background, that this would be her argument in response to Buffalo is frustrating. Nothing about capitalism, et cetera. Sorry. All right, now I'm done.
No, I actually wanted to look more into Dr. Taylor because I don't know much about it, but I was curious. But there was a statement in that article that almost sounds like some of our favorite Pan-African, whatever you want to call the people. But when they talked about trillions of dollars in white taxpayers' money to succeed. And then they talked about also like what other community destroys their own community. So like when you talk about some of these black supposedly militant people using right-wing rhetoric, you can literally pull a couple of these words up.
She's not doing that. I just want to be clear. She was quoting the manifesto of the shooter. So she's not making an argument, but she's just couching.
Yeah, I'm talking about her. Like in the article, it was one of the I guess it was quoting him.
That's what I'm saying. She's quoting him. But the point is, my point at least is that she's quoting him making these racist arguments and saying that he's only been able to reach these conclusions because of Fox News and the Republican right wing. Right. And again, I'm not saying that they're good, and I'm not saying they're better than the Democrats. I'm simply saying by incessantly focusing or exclusively focusing on the right, which is very easy to do, particularly for prominent publications in the mainstream. It doesn't do us any good analytically. And then, of course, because the conclusion unspoken is we have to vote for Biden and them. Go ahead.
Yeah. Wait, one more thing. So I did see some of the pastors in there that seemed like they had more of a political focus. So they talked about how people will use these conveniences to justify, I guess, anything political, but they'll never talk about use the power of the state to address these issues. So I think they insinuated about state violence opposed to just like this type of violence. So I think, it was towards the end, there was like two passages that she quoted that it seemed like, at least the Christian community have some kind of political awareness.
Well, I mean, her last paragraph reads, "The conservative hysteria that seeks to envelop American history in a shroud of innocence and ignorance and thus refuses to acknowledge the roots of racial inequality, residential segregation, underemployment is a convenient justification for never having to use power of the state to address these issues. It also perpetuates the delusion that segregation is a choice and that Black neighborhoods suffer greater inequities because of something intrinsic to the people who live in these communities. This is not just wrong, it's dangerous. And on an otherwise warm Saturday afternoon, a shooter stepped out of the darkness and showed us what happens when we continue to hide from our history," end quote. And my point is that the Democratic Party and the so-called liberals have played as much a role in creating that condition as anyone else. So when she talks about getting to the roots of racial inequality, she herself, because I know her work at least a little bit in some of her history, she knows better that, in terms of at least raising the level of the focus on capitalism and offering other economic and social alternatives. But she just does the very basic liberal argument and says that the problem is that the right wing, the Republicans, are misusing state power and encouraging this kind of violence. And again, I think that's an easy argument to make that doesn't advance us. And I'm saying that whether it's Roland Martin doing his version of it, as I mentioned the other day, or Dr. Taylor doing it in her version in the New Yorker, I'm seeing this sort of being sort of a mainstreaming of a kind of analysis that is being encouraged among Black communities that, again, speaking about Malcolm yesterday, is the vacuum again created by Malcolm and other people's assassination and political imprisonment. But anyway, go ahead, Diallo. I think you were trying to jump in.
Well, it kind of bothers me when we talk about, the right, left in relationship to Democrats and Republicans, because the Democrats and the Republican are right. They're both right-wing parties. They both have right-wing values, right-wing agendas. They are both capitalist, imperialist parties. So that isn't as though, and then we look at, we call the Democrats left, the Democrat Party left, because they have some socially liberal policies and socially liberal leanings. But Barack Obama, if he had ran for president under any other in any other Western democracy, if he was running for prime minister or president in any other liberal democracy, he would have been seen as a centrist or far right candidate. only within the United States would someone with a political pedigree and a political platform such as Barack Obama could be seen as left, liberal, be called socialist, Mao, communist. The only place on earth where he could be defined as those things, the only place on earth where Biden could be called a socialist, which he is, he's called a communist in right-wing media, is the United States, because the United States is so far. The reason why I try to explain to people all the time is the reason why the Republicans are so obviously insane is because under the Clinton administration, the Democratic leadership, DLC leadership committee completely stole their platform. So when the Democrats completely engulfed the Republican platform, the Republicans were left with three choices: go further to the left than the Democrats, merge the Democrats and Republicans into one single party state like Mexico under the PRI, or North Korea or the Chinese kind, where there's a one party state, or go further to the right, to the point of where it's a completely unhinged, irrational, overtly fascist party. And it chose the latter, to go completely further to the right. So when we discuss politics, we're often skewed be talking about, oh yeah, the conservatives versus the liberals, or the left versus the right. It's not really appropriate to call the Republicans the right juxtaposed to Democratic leftism, because they're both the right. So when I talk about mainstream politics, I talk about the status quo. They're both status quo parties. They both fully embrace the status quo, and the status quo is firmly far right for both parties. So, that's why I think it gets skewed, and why we have so many Black people in the Black community that are anti-left, because they think, well, Democrats are the left. I don't want to be left. I just had someone the other day tell me, the left and the right are no good. I'm like, no, I'm a leftist. And people jump down my throat for saying, out and proud leftist. I am a leftist. My ideology is left wing. My agenda is left wing. I am a leftist. And they're like, oh, you must be a Democrat. So I just think that we have to better explain to our community, because I'm seeing, especially in social media, less in face-to-face interactions when you're able to really talk to people. But on social media, I'm seeing more and more Black people being seduced by right-wing rhetoric. Like you said, where you even kind of went there where, oh, Trump acknowledged that our communities, with what have you got to lose? Our communities are shitholes and shithole communities. And Black people really believe that Trump is, when he's literally a slumlord. He literally made his money from being a slumlord. And people believe, well, Trump will say it, and we're suffering under the Democrats, which means we're suffering under left wing. So Black people literally start to oppose left wing policies and left wing ideologies, because we have the false impression that the Democrats are left wing. That's one part of what I wanted to address. But and to criticize the Democrats, we can only justifiably criticize the Democrats from a left-wing analysis, and we can only move further left of the Democrats. It's not that if we are going to reject the Democrats, we have to move to the left of the Democrats on the political spectrum. There is no, disengaging, because most Black people become basically politically neutralized, or start to be seduced by right-wing rhetoric because of our justified discontentment with the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I mean, and the process is somewhat remarkable, even if I think I understand it and hate it. That even after, I always remember that after that first 2 years of Obama's presidency, where he was in office and had the House and the Senate, the Democratic majorities, and they did nothing. They did nothing to live up to what were the imposed,
right? But he was very busy. Obama actually got
absolutely
quite a bit. He did a lot to shore up capitalism, to expand the empire, to entrench corporate interest, to validate many of George Bush's mass surveillance policies. Obama was able to subvert one of the biggest progressive movements since the civil rights era, which was the Occupy movement. He did a multi-state coordinated, and some people say he overreached the federal, using federal resources and military surveillance to subvert a civilian movement. He increased the bounty on Assad Shakur. And that's my issue when we say, oh, the Democrats don't do nothing, or Obama didn't do anything. Obama did a lot. And we do better.
I'm being clear that my point is that he didn't do anything to live up to the people's imposed fantasies on him, and then was able to skillfully, and he's still doing it, to blame everything he didn't do on the right. And that's sort of the point I'm getting at here, that there's an ability to constantly just have people defend him and the party by blaming everything on the Republicans. And it's at least to a large extent, effective. But let me pull up here the piece you wanted us to look at, Geechee, because in just even the a quick scan of it, and I admit I have not had a chance to read it yet. Ajamu Baraka's piece here from Hood Communist, Buffalo solidifies the consensus. I kept reading Buffalo Soldier. Buffalo solidifies the consensus of white supremacy. But I've already, just in the skimming, I've already seen references to Walter Rodney, I can't even remember now, but there was there were several references to what was already an improvement on where we just were analytically. But go ahead. Let me.
Well, before that, I wonder. I know. I wonder how yesterday when the sister talked about, I think she said ultra left or something like that, or extra left.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I wonder what was in, because I know we had time.
Said extra left.
Extra left, yeah. So I don't know what was. We didn't have a lot of time to talk about it, but what came to mind, or I
thought there was. I heard, and again, we didn't have time to finish it, but what I heard her raising was that some of us are making a mistake of being too left.
Okay. Yeah.
In how we approach others in our community. I'm not confident that I'm 100% right on that, but that's what I heard. That's how I heard the point she was making.
Okay.
And so
I still think that we need to better understand, because this is really a remarkable position that we're in because of the mainstream politics. I think Black people are in this state of being basically juggled. We're either Democrat, Republican, or politically neutralized, or politically numb, or completely disengaged from the system. And I think that the lack of political education that goes on, and I don't, from the broader sense of political education, just understanding what is left, what is right, who is left and who is right, but the broader political education, understanding the hierarchical structures in this society, that and how the political system sustains the hierarchies and preserves the status quo using a myriad of techniques, from overt racism to liberalism and tokenism, such as Biden appointing all of these Black women to positions of authority within the system. I think we do ourselves a disservice, and we render ourselves essentially incapable of engaging the system in our interest as a people, as a community, if we do not have these better understandings of why do the Democrats, why are they able to convince over 90% of the Black voters that they are the better alternative? Why are some Black people, after their discontentment their justified discontentment with the Democratic Party, being seduced into the Republican Party? And where we have several people, from celebrities like Ice Cube and what's his name?
Kanye,
from celebrities to rank and file members within the Black movement that either openly say the Republicans are more viable, Killer Mike, to those who won't say the word Republican, but they verbatim repeat the rhetoric of the Republican Party when they come to do their seduction, when they talk about family values, when they talk about our communities have been neglected under Democrats and things of that nature. You know, the political confusion, hysteria, and then the maladaptation. I would say it's a our maladaptation to the political arena in the United States. I think it needs more discussion because things are getting worse. We're squandering what minimal level of political power and potential that we have in this nation. We're squandering it, and most of it's being squandered because of our depths of confusion we have about left wing, right wing, and the nature of power, political power in the U.S.
But my brother-in-law got a new pair of them Kanye Adidas. I don't know if they're called shoes.
Sliders.
He got a pair of them joints. You know, but he's a rapper though. Shout out to Ideal Baiano. Go check out his work. We got to feature some more of it and have him on here. But you know, anyway, so that's a step towards freedom, pun intended.
Yo, I every day I walk out my door here on the south side of Chicago, I'm seeing Yeezys. They're starting to displace Jordans. Breaks my heart.
I didn't think that many people could afford them. Them joints are crazy.
They can't. You can't. Just because you can't afford to do something don't mean you're not going to do it. You know, it's true. And I'm seeing Yeezys all over the hood. We couldn't afford Jordans, but we managed. We made a way out of no way. When God,
I know I'm just tripping because these are like twice 2 or 3 times the cost of Jordans. Those things are crazy. Anyway,
all over the place. It blows my mind. I just went to a young brother to meet with this young brother, and I met him at his house. He came to the door in Yeezys, and I just feel some type of way. I feel some type of way, but they're all over.
I've never been one to be on top of fashion, but I don't see it. I'm not. I don't know. I'm like, what? Anyway, let's get to this article, man.
So I mean, pretty much there. I think it was originally published in the Black Agenda Report, but I think here it's easy to tie in. Obviously, the Ukraine situation. If you go like all the way to the bottom, there's literally. He's pretty. I mean, it almost seemed like they're talking about the other article, but right above. There will be no proletarian internationalism, he said, but instead of engaging in some principal reporting on the shooting in Buffalo, the neoliberal press decides to politicize the event to favor the political objectives of the Democratic Party by attempting to connect the shooter to Donald Trump and the entire MAGA movement that they are trying to criminalize. Even though the shooter himself made the connection with the movement in Ukraine, of course, some are falling for it, including liberal left that had become cheerleaders for Ukraine, even as Ukrainian President Zelensky shuts down the left parties. The press and gives a green light to repression, including the murder of any opposition to his policies. So, I mean, for what I was seeing, obviously, he tied in Walton Rodney, but I feel like he tied in from the start of our contact with them all the way to now, and so show how it wasn't any kind of break in state violence and state sanctioned violence by even I guess the working class or the poor whites as well.
So in other words, I've just been biting Ajamu's argument without even knowing it. That's what you're saying. That's
almost. I mean, you know. Hey, listen. You made it a hot line. He made it a hot article.
There you go. Well put.
It's. I just, you know, when he said that it's a declaration of war, you know, and the reality is there's going to be another news cycle and this story will be dropped just like Dylan Roof. I mean, all these, it's not really a declaration of war. It's a continuation of the status quo. Timothy McVeigh said that he wanted to start a civil war when he blew up the Murrah Federal Building and he placed a bomb by the daycare. There was a daycare on the ground floor for federal employees and community members, and there were Black people there. The Waco, Texas siege, where the Branch Davidians were under siege by the by the Clinton administration, and most of the people in that were black, non-white, under David Koresh, which they ignored. They said David Koresh was a white supremacist, but a large part of his cult congregation was people of African descent. They said that Ruby Ridge was going to be a war when they went and the government sharpshooter sniper shot a white woman that had a baby sucked at her breast and blew her brains out, brain matter on the infant. This stuff, these racial atrocities and these government state atrocities go on. They're essentially cyclical. Every administration has its highlighted civil war moment, so I really don't see that this is a declaration of war, and people talk about starting a race war. This race war started in 1492, and it's been ongoing, ceasing. So, I just even try to avoid talking about, this latest atrocity because of I just didn't want to get caught up. I just, and focus on Kevin Samuels' debate because it's just easy to do it because we start to say, oh, this is the start of the war. This is that. This is the status quo. This is the state of affairs for living under capitalism and white hegemony. And we do what I call atrocity hopping. And every time there's a new atrocity, it drowns out all the other atrocities. And so that we think this is some, and not to disrespect the lives lost, some major event, when it really is just a part of the larger system of power, of wealth accumulation and oppression. This is not a declaration of war. This is a continuation of the status quo.
So when I'm reading through the article, it sounds like he's explaining that it's a continuation and not a start. So I guess when you say
that last line kind of belies his own argument. So let's.
But that's what I'm saying. But
yeah. Mm-hmm. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Can the concept of declaration mean just another statement? Does it always have to mean the beginning of something?
The beginning of. I don't think in the context of Ajamu's article that I've even just skimmed a little bit, I don't think he's not saying it's just starting. In fact, quite the opposite. He's saying it's a constant continuation, or it's a statement to your point, Geechee, that the war is actually on. Yeah. But Ajamu's analysis goes in the other direction from Dr. Taylor's, and that's the point I'm getting at. He's coming at it from an approach of white supremacy and capital as the foundations of the problem, and calls her out in that one paragraph, not directly, of course, but calls out that analysis that says, stop ignoring the true roots of the problem, because the Republican Party and Tucker Carlson are not the origins of this problem. So anyway, but I get your point, Diallo. I just don't think that it applies to Ajamu.
It's where you find most racists, like this 18-year-old, right? I'm pretty sure. I mean, I've read, I don't know where my notes, before they snatched it down, I read was reading through the manifesto. And what he was saying does verbatim come from those sources. He definitely was inspired by Obama's presidency. But what he thought, what was in his mind versus the conditions that create him, because a lot of times these right-wing reactionaries, these what I call them is white aggressors. I don't like saying supremacists, but these white aggressors, there are direct references. I mean, in his manifesto, he quotes certain thought leaders that are either known within the Republican Party or further to the right of the Republican Party. Only reason, and so that is a legitimate concern that I don't think it would behoove us to overlook the fact that what was in his own mind, in his own stated motivations.
No, I'm not discounting that he references Tucker or Tucker-like arguments. What I'm saying is that is the watering of a seed. And what I'm saying is the seed are all the other problems that are, if not created by, certainly supported by both parties equally, going back to where you were even starting.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying, like, if everybody had health care and there was no wars and everybody had a job and everybody had a decent school to go to, and then you pour Tucker Carlson water on that seed, I'm just suggesting it's less likely to flower in this way. That's all. And the Democratic Party doesn't want to acknowledge that, and the people who are claiming to be left don't want to acknowledge that, because that's not how you get a tenured gig at an Ivy League institution and get published in the New Yorker.
That's what I was actually about to ask. I don't want to give her excuse, but like when you're writing in the New Yorker or these other things as opposed to Hood Communist or somewhere, like how much can you not commodify the depth of these people and actually do real journalism? Like,
well, I don't want to make this too much about Dr. Yamahtta Taylor, but I think that from watching her career from afar, I haven't done it like a deep dive into all of her work, but I have seen this what I have felt like was an unfortunate mainstreaming of her argument. If going back to where I was introduced to her work, she's clearly got an analysis beyond what was in that printed page, and even what was in one of the more prominent books she's published that I read at least a good portion of. I can't remember, but that argument, that analysis kind of gets lost in. So I don't know about. So again, not making this just about her, but I will say structurally that you will not be invited to the likelihood, I should say, of making it to the level of an academic post that she now has or that others have, and publicly maintaining that left analysis is less likely. And you're not likely to, I can't imagine getting published in the New Yorker, offering up an anti-colonial, anti-imperialist analysis of a shooting, or anything for that matter. So there is an inducement to mainstream the argument and to not go left of the Democratic Party. And that's sort of how I simplify that mainstream space, the acceptance of that mainstream space. So academia can be tricky. I mean, that's the thing. Like, there are people, academia can be tricky. And if you want to be, it's just like what I've argued elsewhere. You can't be rich, famous, and radical all at the same time.
So I guess that's what bell hooks mean by being trapped in academia, in a way of not being
in part.
Yeah.
Although there would be those who would argue, as was the case when she passed, that she trapped herself in a certain pop mainstream space, an academic space. I mean, she did not have a sort of run-of-the-mill academic career by any means. And enjoyed certain posts and positions herself. And but as she said, when she went too far, her own mainstream access was diminished. So I just think, so I prefer to leave it at that. I in general, there's some people obviously we have to target specifically and criticize specifically, but in general, I like to point out the institutional impact and the structural impact on people's decision making, even if I disagree with it. But that's just the reality. And if you want to end up at an HBCU teaching 4 classes at half the salary, then you write in Hood Communist or elsewhere, or do shows like this. And if you want not to have that and to make twice the money with half the classes, which is usually my academic, where I start at my academic concern. How many classes are you teaching and how much money do you make? Then you do something else and you'll be more well rewarded. That said, but anyway, go ahead, Diallo. Go ahead.
Ultimately, what I'm finding that by and large, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I hope that I am wrong, many of these critiques, these broader critiques, as we condemn people like Dr. Taylor for, and I ain't trying to start nothing, for sheepdogging for the Democratic Party. As we condemn them, we end up driving a segment of the Black community towards the right. I mean, am I the only one observing this?
No, and the same thing happens. Look, the first thing that often happens if I offer up an initial criticism of the Democratic Party, the defensive response is, so what you want us to do, vote for Trump or vote for the Republic? And again, I'm saying no. But that is what I'm saying is encouraged by analyses like the ones I'm and Najama are being critical of.
Even beyond, voting. Even beyond voting, because we only get to vote ever so often. We got to live every day. And so once you go beyond the polls, and because in many voting, because outside of national elections, like here, we have the Democratic primary coming up, and the Democratic Party is essentially the election here. You know, everybody who wins the Democratic primary, 98% of them are going to go on to win the office. The primary is the election. So we don't even have options. Like in Chicago, I keep throwing my vote down the Green Party abyss every election cycle. So I don't even have, candidates. But beyond that, because if it was just in the polls, if Black people were just displaying this confusion in the polls behind that little curtain or in that little cubicle, I wouldn't be concerned. But in our day-to-day life, in our day-to-day interactions, as the Republicans are, in our value system, I'm seeing the penetration of right-wing ideology, right-wing values, and right-wing agendas. When you have people like Dr. Umar rising to prominence who could easily and comfortably fit with any right-wing think tank or Christian conservative, if just you tweak him this much, focus on the family, the Heritage Foundation, and these other far-right organizations, most of the ideology in many prominent Black
privatized schooling.
Exactly. Privatized guns, this homosexual Killer Mike and the NRA. So when we criticize, so that's why
is that your phrase? Did you credit? Are you to be credited for that? Amosexual? I've never heard. I don't think I've heard that.
No, that's well. I don't remember where I heard it. It's been around for a while, but
So I guess I would have to then be. I guess I think I'm ammo curious then.
Right.
I have to be like I might just be ammo curious.
A gun owner and being an amosexual. When you promote guns as a hobby, guns as something to defend your life versus guns being an embodiment of your liberty, So when you look at that, the right wing that I'm seeing, that I'm combating the rightward drift of Black ideology. The rightward, and there's a lot of attractive ideas being vomited up by the right wing, especially in the arena of family values, personal responsibility,
Black entrepreneurialism.
You snatched it right out of my mouth. Entrepreneur and business, right? But all of that. So I'm thinking in our critique of the Democrats and the Democratic sheepdogs, there is a segment of our community, especially a lot of alphas, a lot of chest thumpers. You saw the white boys were out here marching with their guns, and in less than a year, you had all these Black people out here marching with guns, literally mimicking the white right wing. And they take the red, white, and blue off and put on the red, black, and green and say this is African now. And that's literally the only thing they change. So that bothers me quite a bit. It bothers me quite a bit. And then it leaves me, like you said, when people say, the Democrats are fascist, fascist, and the Democrats are imperialists, blah, blah, blah. And then you say, well, what are you, Republican? I go and say the Republicans are overtly racist party. Oh, you must be a Democrat. That's the quality of our political dialogue.
Well, but I think that so for me though, once I get past the initial emotional reaction to it, for me this is why I keep wanting to be critical of both pop culture and pop academia, journalism, etc., because I think that is what helps guide everybody and manage everybody in because once people look up and they're saying, wow, my situation sucks, or that situation sucks, that's where all of these structural outside or extra communal influences start to pour in to say, look, I mean, one of my favorite articles that I keep going back to was the one from 2018 where the Air Force was doing war games in preparation for what they were saying were going to be the coming uprisings of Generation Z, who are now realizing that all the promises of a better day weren't coming for them. So this is before George Floyd, before the pandemic. They were already concerned that Generation Z, across racial lines, white folks specifically, were going to uprise. So the military was doing war games to prevent or prepare for that. So that's, of course, part of the response. The other part of the response is the uptick is, I think I should have done a study, or maybe I should find if it's been done, that would show an uptick in anti or pro-capitalist propaganda post the pandemic, post George Floyd, as there's been a need to reinforce for people becoming critical of the situation. This whole don't go past, if you hear a critique of the Democrats, that means you got to be Republican. If you hear a critique of the Republicans, that means you got to be a Democrat. And then when we step in, or variations of what we represent on this screen step into the conversation, if it can happen at all, it doesn't, it's often, not reaching the kind of conclusion we want to reach. So, or having the impact we want to reach. So, that's why I think it's important that we to bring up what, is being said popularly, and try to. Speaking of which, look, I know we got Dr. Burroughs coming up in a few minutes. Can I go ahead? Because I actually wanted to have fun with a little clip here real quick. But go ahead.
No, well, now that we got all these LLCs, we got a whole graduating class that's coming with LLCs. It's about to get better.
Shout out to the revolutionary Pinky.
So what I haven't looked past the headline of that. And
she partnered with Viral Bank. Her and Viral Bank together. They gave away Viral Bank, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they she from Baltimore, so the accent, I had to look it up. Viral or Viral. But she but they pretty much gave LLCs to all of the graduating class of Clark. The funny thing is, there's a couple.
Yeah, I saw that, but I was like, how is that happening? And what LLC and what?
But that's the thing. What they have to do, they didn't explain the procedure, because they had how you just got a college degree, and they had people walking out of that graduation like, I'm a business owner, because they've been promised the LLC. Basically, it was a broad promotion. They're going to have to open an account with that bank. And then they're going to have to fill out. And basically what they're doing is basically covering the filing fees. Mm-hmm. That's what they rate. And you know how much filing fees? It was actually more, because like here to file an LLC, it's about $50. If you go on LegalZoom, it's a little cheaper. But in Georgia, actually, it's $100. So basically, she stood up there and said, I'm going to give everybody $100, but you have to spend it with this institution for this particular item. So she gave $100 to the each member of the graduating class but she said that they have to spend it on this particular item. That's basically how it's going to play out.
So I just want to just real quick. My bad. Go ahead. I just want to show this article one more time. It's for my favorite statistic.
Yeah. No, that's an important article for the conversation, and I wouldn't be surprised.
But this right here in particular.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Black businesses increased from 92 to 2012 from 3.6% to 10%. That's not the exact. It was 2 million jobs were created between 92 and 2012, and the capture of the national revenue went from 1% down to 0.5%. So in other words, the creation of businesses and LLCs does nothing in terms of capturing any part of the economy or growing wealth.
Yeah,
you must not be on social media. You don't see these people in Bali, in the French Riviera. You don't see them posing inside those grounded private jets.
Those grounded, that's right. And then they all take turns getting their one shot. And then you
obviously are not on social media, brother, because yes, the entrepreneurial class is balling out of control. And you being Dr. ball should understand how hard they out here balling.
Let me make this is my prophetic statement.
You
I
looking
think
at numbers and stats.
I think what's going to happen.
Instagram.
And I think what's going to happen is Pinky going to use this opportunity because she's supposed to be opening up multiple locations. She's going to use this opportunity to attract some of those new business owners to open up a location for her. She might even do a P. Diddy contest or something where.
Oh, no, she not, because they don't have capital. Oh, no, she not. You not. LLC stands for long live capitalism. Them kids, listen. I know mad people that was. I remember there was an LLC craze back in the 90s too. Everybody went and got an LLC. Oh, brother, I'm a corporation, and it was tied in with that whole sovereignty stuff and as a person, a legal person, and everybody, you're gonna do something under your LLC. These LLC exuberance comes and goes. An LLC ain't nothing but a piece of paper, just like you get your NFP. I got documents all over the place. If you want to waste $100 on some documents, I can go in my file cabinet right now and sell you some real official looking paper, embossed and embroidered papers. It ain't nothing but something, Like on my wall, I have an old Black Star Line stock, and you better just go get you some old Garvey Black Star Line stock. And put it in a frame and put it on the wall right next to your slutty vegan LLC. It's really insulting. No business loan, no consulting, no business plan and instruction, just a document. No money to back it up.
Yeah, I can't say that I read any details that ensure any of that yet. So yeah,
I looked it up.
Wait a minute, am I reading the chat right? This isn't the adult film star. This is what
no, not that Pinky. No, this Pinky from Baltimore. No,
it's slutty vegan.
First of all, I just want to be clear. I don't know who the adult film star is. I just don't understand the reference that I'm seeing in the chat. I just want to be clear. No. I don't know anything about any of that.
Yeah, I only know Pinky through her rap career. As far as she does something other than rap.
Who? Which Pinky? Raps. Wait, what are you talking about?
There's a rapper named Pinky.
Oh no, I don't know that. I just know Pinky from Baltimore.
Too short.
No.
Oh wow.
That's how I know Pinky, through her music. I don't know her through her other ventures.
Well, look. So I'll come back to these other things. We don't have time for this. This is some silly stuff.
Got time for that.
Did you, just real quick, I'll at least show what I wanted. Did you all see this press conference the other day with Morgan State grad April Ryan questioning the new press secretary?
On issue of the soul of this nation. Yeah. Charlottesville. He speaks.
Watch your mouth, Timothy. Watch your mouth.
Strengthen civil rights. DOJ, strengthen civil rights in other departments.
So she's asking about Biden's strengthening of the DOJ and all of that.
Changing this hate that has been plaguing this nation since the inception of this nation. Where's the teeth that the president, people are expecting when it comes to these issues? And on the summit issue, is the White House looking at what Bill Clinton did? The precedent of having the. So
I just want to be clear that the question is, where's the teeth on all the promises of Biden's advancing? He's already, expanded the diversity of the DOJ and all this other kind of stuff. But where's the teeth? And the teeth she's referencing is Bill Clinton's, commission on race.
We want people from all walks of life together to discuss issues of race.
The browning of America.
Is the president looking at that as well? And then I have another.
Oh, okay. Wait, stop. Okay. This is a president that has been very clear about race in this country, right? When he walked in, he talked about the multiple crises that were facing us as a country.
All right, we don't have time. I'm gonna stop it there, and it's more irritating watching it now for some reason. But
he was very clear on race, and he said that if you don't vote for him, you ain't black. Very clear.
And then the second part of the conversation the question was just about the importance of the sister being a black woman in this position, what it means for Black girls and women in the country itself, and playing on the whole Haitian immigrant thing, and then the whole I grew up here thing, and now I'm here thing, and it was just frustrating. So, but. Anyway, so my bad. Let me. I don't want to hold up our next guest, and I think there's in many ways there's a lot of parallel and overlap. So let's just take a quick break and come back with Dr. Todd Steven Burroughs and talk about technology and the new double consciousness. Back real quick. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. All right, everybody, welcome back. I mix what I like. Black Power Media, Geechee Y'all, Brother Diallo Kenyatta, and Dr. Todd Steven Burroughs joining us this morning to talk about a new piece recently published, another set of book reviews at imixwhatilike.org, titled "The New Double Consciousness." New books explore technologies, pluses, minuses in struggle. Dr. Burroughs, welcome back, and let's get into it. What have you found, and what are you saying in your reviews here?
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, and I don't know Brother Geechee and Brother Diallo. Good morning. I enjoyed the level of hate that was expressed in the last hour. I was very impressed by that. I want to say a couple of things before I answer Dr. Ball's question. First of all, I want to congratulate Black Power Media. I mean, if you did nothing else but that Daruba telethon that you did, you would have been one of the most impressive expressions of Black media, particularly radical Black media of the 21st century. So I wanted to first congratulate you on that, and I wanted to congratulate the collective of Black Power Media on that and on your second year. I think that
Thank you
what
very
you're
much.
sure. I think that what you're doing is going to be even more important as we go toward this election year. And if I may, I mean, forgive me, Diallo and Geechee, Dr. Ball knows I'm a Groucho Marxist, right? So I just wanted to do a gentle contribution to last hour's conversation, which I enjoyed.
Sure.
And then I want to answer your question, Dr. Ball, because I definitely want to get into that because see, I have to talk about, Dr. Ball has trained me, see, so I have to talk about my own biases when I read a book and write an article. Now, see, he's trained me, but I'll get to that in a moment. All right. I don't want to cast aspersions on any academic because I have tried and failed to be one, right? So I just want to just kind of point out, if I can gently, the role that the elite academic plays in the society, because I really enjoyed what you brothers were saying about Sister Taylor, right? Who is a prominent, very serious scholar who I have nothing but the greatest level of respect for, right? As I do for, by the way, Marc Hill, who we're about to talk about soon, right? Uh, the man put his career on the line for the Palestinians. I respect that, right? However, we have to have a frank discussion if we're going to talk about decolonized thought, which I think is what you brothers definitely reach for and get. If we talk about decolonized thought, we have to talk about the role that these publications play, that these academics write for, as well as the role that these academics have, right? So when we talk about a Dr. Taylor, for instance, we're talking about somebody who, when she came to Princeton, they promoted her from assistant professor to full professor. I don't know if people know that. I know Dr. Ball knows that, but I don't know if many people know that, right? So when you have these,
I didn't know that. So she went.
if I
So
have
she
this
didn't.
right, she went from assistant professor to full professor at
And
Princeton.
which is skipping associate.
Yeah, they were like, no, let's skip all of that. You've written all these books and everything. Let's skip all of that. Let's just stop pretending that we're not in love here, right? marry me, right? Okay. And when we look at, for instance, again, Dr. Lamont Hill, who we're about to talk about, he has an endowed chair at Temple, right? Now, we cannot, and I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm Groucho Marxist, right? but we cannot be naive enough to think that okay, that these positions don't come with certain social expectations. Renegade, that's my question too. Where is Dr. Haight? Absolutely.
It's a
We might have to,
standard question.
he's not an ancestor, so we can't call him in, right? But we can at least ask, right? Where's Dr. Haight? Very always a good question. But let's go back. So we can't expect that these positions at these elite universities don't come with social expectations, right? So when you have people who are clearly left, Dr. Hill, Dr. Taylor, right? When they're in this environment where, we openly see now the United States forming a white apartheid government in the structure of South Africa, right? When we literally see that happening, we can't, it would be difficult to expect us, or be naive to us to expect us to expect people in those roles not to then and go recruit Democrats, right? So this is where you get a Taylor analysis. Now, I want to point out how complex elite journalism can be depending on the year and depending on the circumstance, right? The New Yorker is very clear in the perspective it comes from, very intellectual, very liberal, right? So it comes with the kind of article that Taylor wrote. But I want to point out another black female writer, one of my absolute favorites, a sister whose name I'm going to mispronounce. Her name is Rachel Kadzi Gansa. Rachel Kadzi Gansa. Now, almost 10 years ago, she set the literary internet on fire. She set the literary web on fire because I kept getting all these emails from people who were serious readers of magazine articles going, have you read this article about Dave Chappelle? That's all it was called. It was called The Article About Dave Chappelle, right? Rachel Kazi Gansa, somebody I had never heard of before, but when I did my research, I found out she was the first black intern at Harper's,
Mm.
right? And think about it, she was the first black intern at Harvard. That means that Harvard had no black people until like 2010 or whatever the year she got in it, right? Um, she wrote this piece that's based on a very famous piece of magazine journalism called Frank Sinatra Has a Cold. That was done by Gay Talese in Esquire magazine. What makes that article so famous is that Gay Talese was not given access to Frank Sinatra. So then he interviewed everybody else. He interviewed everybody in his orbit. He was able to watch Frank Sinatra, but he was never able to talk to Frank Sinatra. So he writes this major 20,000 word piece on Frank Sinatra, and it's considered one of the classics of American journalism. I have literally a hardcover book with that article and even Gay Talese's notes and all of that on my coffee table, right? Um, so Sister Gonza writes this article on Dave Chappelle where she's not given access to Dave Chappelle, and she goes, "Okay, I'll just write my version of Frank Sinatra Has a Cold," and she becomes this phenomenon as a writer, right? Now, here's the point I'm making that's important to the people here and to this audience. She wrote a piece for GQ in 2017 that won her the Pulitzer Prize. And to counter what Taylor did, I think it's very interesting when I heard your conversation on Taylor and this whole recruitment, because this climate of fear, we're approaching midterms, etc. She wrote this piece on Dylan Roof because GQ, a major white magazine, sent her to cover the trial of Dylan Roof. And for those who don't know about magazine culture, when these major magazines send you out to do something, whether it's Ta-Nehisi Coates and reparations, or whether it's this instance, they pay for everything. So she's at a hotel for 3 months. She's in the courtroom every day covering Dylan Roof. I mean, because these are major pieces, right? And this is in addition to probably the $20,000 she got to do that article, right? Because these big magazines pay $1 a word, and when they want a big feature, they pay $1 a word, sometimes more than $1 a word, $1.50 a word, right? Anyway, I'm pointing this out because Rachel Kanzi Gonza, I don't know what her politics are, but the article in GQ is called "A Most American terrorist, the making of Dylan Ruth. And in very intellectual language, she says a variant of what you were saying, because she finishes the article by saying, she talks about nothing about the Republican Party. She talks about America. And she says in very intellectual language for her white elite audience, America created Dylan Ruth because Dylan Ruth is a typical American. Now, she wrote that in GQ. Now, to show you how hegemony works,
Todd, real quick. I just want you to check your mic. I hear a lot of banging and bumping or whatever. I don't know if that's if it's
that might be me moving around. I'll try to stay still.
Right. Okay.
And the point I want to make about hegemony now is that, you know, her agenda was to first go and write about the black victims of Dylan Ruth, right?
Mm-hmm.
But she got turned off from that when she started dealing with the white supremacy of the issue, and even how, for instance, as a victim of white supremacy, even how she behaved, because she talked about in the courtroom when Dylan Ruth's mother starts crying, because she's like in back of her or in front of her, whatever. Her first reaction was to try to give her a tissue or whatever, and then she stopped herself. So wait, right? So, but she wrote about it. She was honest enough to write about it and saying, "It's this black compassion we have, right, toward racism that's white supremacist based." So she does very sophisticated things in this article, and even though I'm not in love with how the article went from being from the black victims to about Dylan Ruth, because, you know, to kind of cleanse herself at the end of the article, she literally writes the victims' names in the sand and watches the waves wash it away. Right, very theatrical, performative thing that, you know, you do at the end of a piece when you don't have an ending, you know, whatever. And then she's a brilliant writer, though, right? But I want to point out that she wrote this article in 2017, not in 2022. She wasn't worrying about so Trump was already in office. She wasn't worrying about the Democratic Party. She was worrying about telling the truth about America. And she won the Pulitzer Prize for it. Right? So when people approach these magazines, particularly from these lofty positions, you know, it's a complex negotiation as to what they're going to do, what they're not going to do, and what position they're going to take. But I think that, you know, again, we'd be naive to not think that people like, you know, Jelani Cobb, who writes for the New Yorker, and Dr. Taylor, who writes for the New Yorker, and, you know, and Hill, who, you know, who does various media, that they're not positioned to do exactly what they're designed to do. Like, they know what if I may use an academic theory that's applied to feminism, they know what their social role is within hegemony, right? And so they fight against or embrace the social role that they've been given. I hope that makes sense, brothers. I hope that makes sense.
I think it makes sense. Yeah.
So I just wanted to give a little contribution to the last hour of discussion, because I think that if we kind of keep this theme of, you know, social role, we can then go into now my book review. And see, now I have to make fun of myself now before I talk about this book review. See, the books that I've reviewed here are the kind of books that I like. Because see, Dr. Ball, again, trained me, and one of the things in which his training said was that you have to state upfront your biases, right? So I'm going to state upfront my bias, right? These kind of books were books that I not only like, but I think back in the day they were books that I would probably have written. The me of 20 years ago. Yes, no, I'm admitting that. The me of 20 years ago would have written these books and been very proud of these books. Why? Because I would be, again, if we're talking social role, I would be saying, okay, as the academic, I now have the responsibility to teach to a mass audience about what is going on and to give some contextualization of what is going on. Now, the problem that I have, Brother Geechee, is that about 22 years ago, I met this big, tall, light-skinned brother, right? And see, he had this intellectual integrity, see? He wasn't worrying about being on NPR, even though he's been on NPR. He didn't worry about things. He didn't worry about things like that, right? and this guy with this integrity, he would always chide me and go, well, popularity is a fraudulent social construct, et cetera, et cetera. So like he kind of chipped away at the love I have of popular social role, right? So I'm reading I'm reading these books, and I'm hearing what? A little Dr. Ball inside of my head going, okay, so these people have media PhDs, right? Are they using their media PhDs, Dr. Burroughs? Are they using their media PhDs? With all the stuff we've talked about in terms of propaganda
Well,
and
let's
mind
ask
control.
about that, because
So I'm just saying, there's a sentence in my review. I'm going to read a sentence in my review, because it's a sentence in my review that I wrote just for Dr. Ball. I didn't write this for anybody else but
let's
Dr.
see if
Ball.
it's the same one I highlighted. Go
And
ahead.
I
Which
know
one are
it's
you
the same one
talking
you highlighted,
about?
because I almost put your name on this sentence, Dr. Ball, because I said, look, I cannot get away with reviewing these books, particularly for Dr. Ball's website. And let me just state, in terms of my own, my own writing style, a lot of these elite magazines, the reason why these radical intellectuals disappoint you in these in these elite magazines is that they're writing for their audience, right? And so when I write something for Black Power Media and for Dr. Ball, I'm thinking of all of you. I'm thinking of Ricky Ryan and all these folks in the chat. I think of them when I write this, because I said, okay, I've got to come strong with this, or else they're gonna kick me out of the group, right? And I don't belong to any groups other than Dr. Ball's crew anyway. So like the last thing I want to do is get kicked out of another group. Brother
Oh
Keith,
boy,
you
man, you doing
understand
a
this, right?
lot. You doing
Now,
a lot, man.
now,
What is being
now. So
said in this?
so
Yeah.
let me read this sentence. This is the Dr. Ball sentence. All right, ready? Importantly, both books assume that the individual attempted evil or good act is the chief driving agent of our electronic organizing experience, not the psychological underpinnings of the capitalist tech, and how their purposeful programming has affected human agency, particularly activism. See how
Well,
intellectual that
right.
sentence was? See how
But look at
intellectual
the
that sentence was?
screen. I want you to look at the screen.
There it is. I see
So
it.
without planning, I'm just letting you know that is exactly one of the lines I highlighted in the piece. So because that's what
Brother
I
Keith,
was looking for.
Brother
Go
Keith,
ahead. Go
you
ahead.
see how I wrote that sentence like, I was an intellectual and all that. You see how I did that, right? You said I did that just for Dr. Ball. I said, because Dr. Ball should have been the person to read these books and give his radical critique. But see, the man is a busy man. Okay, he has children. He has a wonderful wife. He helps run a broadcast network. He doesn't have time to do the menial work that I sometimes assign myself to do.
Wow.
Because I think that his audience is worthy of this kind of analysis. You know what I'm talking
Wow.
about, Brother Diallo? I see you laughing, Brother Diallo. You know exactly what
Wow.
I'm talking about.
So can
So
we get past all of this nonsense and get to the point? Why did you write this line? Why?
nonsense.
Because the why are you saying this line here? Because what little of Hill and what's his name's book that I got to read before today, Brewster's book, who, with all respect to the ambiguous, of which I am one, looks like a white man.
You mean Mr. Beckerman?
Todd
Brewster. Todd Brewster.
Todd
Yeah.
Brewster. Yes. So I'm sorry. You wanted me to ask what? Because I just took a quick peek into the chat.
What I'm saying is first I'm saying I'm confirming that the co-author is a white professor. That's
Yes,
the first
correct,
thing I
yes.
wanted to. The other thing I wanted to confirm, and what little of the book I read, is that they seem to be doing the same thing with the line of new technology democratizing media that I had a problem with people like Peniel Joseph saying Kwame Ture wanted to radically democratize or radically, what did he radically, well, oh damn, what was the phrase? Radically transform American democracy. So why did you write this line that I did end up highlighting, and that greatly, caught my definitely caught my eye when I was looking for a summary of what you were trying to say about these two books?
You don't like the answer. The answer is, as someone who's been trained by Dr. Ball to look at media as
You keep saying
systems,
this.
because it's true. As someone who's trained by Dr. Ball to look at media as systems that control hegemony, as much as I enjoyed these books, I mean, you see the previous sentence I say that the arguments are so intellectually bouncy, Tigger would bow down in reverence, right?
Right.
All
Right.
right, so right. So I'm enjoying these books, and I feel guilty about enjoying these books, right? Because as someone who attempted and failed to be a media scholar, right, I kind of know better. And I kind of also know that they know better. Because see, in writing these types of books, because they're doing it for popular audiences, they're only dealing with their own argument, only dealing with their own narrative. So they are dismissing all other scholarship that they disagree with or might be more complex in terms of arguing, etc. Dr. Bo, you've had people on this own network that have done intense studies on Black Twitter and all these things. Well, they're ignoring all of that. They're ignoring all of that, right? That both of these books are focused on historical narrative, but historical narrative designed to make a point. Now, what is the point? Well, Beckerman's point is that technology without real, quiet, organized struggle is useless. So it's Beckerman, interestingly enough, who, by the way,
Who
is the book's
sounds
editor.
correct.
Right. It's Beckerman who's the book editor of the Atlantic. He's the one that's making the radical decolonized argument out of the two books, right?
Mm.
The white middle class Jewish guy who is not engaged in radical struggle, but he's making the correct analysis because he's saying that, because I think he had some sort of line like the pen was the first camera or something like that. Like he's making the analysis that this social media phenomenon and this kind of new phenomenon of just use the technology, be the media, etc., has retarded real revolution. So he's
So
saying
you
no,
quote, I
real
just want to
revolution
highlight.
comes from.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. No, I
I
just
said
wanted
real
to
revolution
highlight your
comes from.
quote of Rodney. Mhm.
Yeah. Real revolution comes from struggle. This is what the white guy is saying in the quiet before. Real revolution comes from struggle, comes from testing ideas, comes from quiet organizing off camera, not being seen. And this might take years, it might take decades, it might take centuries. But if you're not doing that, then the technology doesn't help you, it hinders you.
So is that why you brought in Rodney as opposed, or did he bring up Rodney?
No, I'm bringing up Rodney, and for two
Okay,
reasons. One, I think Rodney proves Beckerman's point,
right.
A. But B, I'm bringing up Rodney because I have still not recovered intellectually or personally from reading this new biography of Walter Rodney that's now out.
Mm-hmm.
Because I
You
really
quote him as
didn't.
saying, I just want to just quickly, Rodney argued that what was important
Yeah,
was whether the extended social structure is mastering the technology and using it for its own purposes, or whether that technology appears as an imposition which could weaken people's capacity to control their environment. So from what you've written here and what little I did read of the Marc Lamont Hill and what's his name's book, they got that argument inverted, and
right,
you're saying
right,
Beckerman got it correct.
right, exactly.
It sounds like Beckerman got it right. Okay, I'm
But
sorry.
why?
Okay.
But why? Beckerman, because Beckerman, see again, that's why I really enjoyed the last hour's discussion, brothers, particularly in the beginning. We have to deal with the role that these people play in the society, the role they've been assigned, right? What Dr. Ball would say, the role that they've been rewarded for, right? Beckerman is not recruiting. Beckerman is not afraid of what's going on in these state houses, etc. And Beckerman is not worrying about Stacey Abrams. He's not worrying about that. That's why he has the freedom intellectually, culturally, economically, clearly, to make his very clear point about radical organizing of the last decade and a half, because he includes Occupy, he includes all of that, and he shows where all of them substitute technology and performance for organizing, right? But Marco Hill and Todd Brewster are trying to get on MSNBC. They're trying to get on NPR. They're trying to get reviewed in places like the New Yorker, the Atlantic, etc. They're trying
Can
to
I read the line that proves that?
go right
There's
ahead.
one line that
Go-
I would use to prove your point when
Go
I
right
read
ahead.
Hill's and what's his name's book. Quote, "The break with the past is nothing short of stunning." Quote, "The thing about King, Dr. King or Ella Baker is that they could not just wake up and sit at the breakfast table and talk to a million people,"
Right,
activist Ray
right,
McKesson said.
right, right.
That's all I need. Activist DeRay, they're quoting DeRay McKesson, calling him an activist, and then saying, again, as has been done, if we've called it out here previously,
Right.
trying to connect unconsciously people's DeRay to Dr. King.
Right.
And that line of that political word. Go ahead, Geechee. Go ahead.
Geechee, I see you 1 second, but let me just say this one thing. Guess who calls out DeRay in these books?
Beckerman
calls him out. Not even afraid as a white Jewish man. No, I'm going to call this black man out because he's fraud. He's a fraud. Now, he doesn't go that strong with the language, but it's very clear what he's saying about DeRay. So if the white
I just have to tell I got to tell my story again, because I saw the fraudulence in person in downtown Baltimore during one of these. It didn't even, I think, rise to the level of a protest. And the contradiction I will never reconcile. Because the police in that one instance were innocent, as a couple protesters tried to entice a conflict that was not being, in other words, and then DeRay throws himself into the mix. And one of his boys starts screaming, "They got DeRay! They got DeRay!" And I'm like, no, they don't. He just threw himself into a crowd. And then you see DeRay come running out, holding his phone. I'm like, oh, I'm okay, brother. I'm okay. And I was like, of course he's okay. There's nothing happening. Stop it. But it went out on social media like it was some kind of fracas caused by the police that DeRay was able to extricate himself from with the luck of whatever. I don't know. Or with it was insane, bananas, nuts. Anyway, sorry. I forgot who was supposed to jump in. My bad.
I actually in the reading the book too, I highlight the same thing. But not only us putting or not us, but people putting DeRay next to King, but when you go to that the Oprah Winfrey African American Museum up in DC, when you get to the top level, it literally leads to DeRay. I'm like, what the fuck is this? But so
wait a minute. DeRay is in the museum?
I don't know if they changed it, but like, you start at the bottom and you start the first ride over here, and then you go up and you keep going to the years and years. And when you get to the top, you'll get to DeRay McKesson, Black Lives Matter, big screen. And it, like, they literally say go from here to Black Lives Matter. They got DeRay all on the videos and shit, like Diddy used to be. But so Oprah and them did that. Now the other thing about the book, when I read that part, Ella Baker and King they couldn't sit at the table and speak to a million people. But like me, I'm thinking about how dangerous that is for the DeRay McKessons, the Charlemagnes, and all these people that have access to a million people. So it almost like it counters the point and makes it seem or proves how hard it is to actually do any kind of organizing on social media platforms where it's pretty much saturated by those people.
Well, Dr. Burroughs, you get the line right in your concluding paragraph. The techno-optimist argument can only be countered by the most primitive of technology, that is in-person, breakable bodies composed of hands and feet blocking, kicking, or throwing something in an attempt, in vain or not, in the rain or not, to leap up and get pricked by history's thorns. But you describe it, so I like the line, well done, well done. But the techno-optimist argument is my main point here that you're highlighting, that there's this idea that because of this new technology, activism is getting better, is having more of a positive impact. But to Geechee's point, that's how I see it. the ability for DeRay to project himself to millions of people at the click of a button is dangerous. And I think part of the design of those who have, going back decades now, constructed this media environment. And that's why what little I did read of Hill and what's his name's book, but that's what I was seeing. And as you describe it, a techno-determinist argument that is, again, automatically assumes that new technology is going to help us, as if our opponents so have access and more access to the same tech.
I
Anyway,
desperately want to hear what Keeanga-Yamahtta has to say, but before I put him on the spot like that, yeah, I do that. Yeah. Okay. But before I do that, I want to say probably the most outrageous thing that they say, that Hill and Brewster say in their book. Okay, look. As a sci-fi geek and somewhat of a techno optimist, I understand this whole thing of, if we had a TARDIS, we could go back in time, right? With the doctor. The doctor, by the way, Doctor Who's now black, by the way. He's now Rwandan, right? The new Doctor Who was announced. He's a Rwandan-born British subject, right? So they're clearly making some points here in the popular culture about what they want to articulate. But this idea that if we could just had a TARDIS, we could just go back in time and fix all of these things, etc. Probably the most outrageous thing that Brewster and Hill say in this book, because they're caught up in the optimism of this, right? They literally say, and I'm not doing this exactly, so I don't want to distort what they say. But they talked about, imagine if we had this technology, years ago, when we were, under violent attack, and I think they're assuming about lynching and other things like that. And they said, imagine if we had social media and we could stand, and broadcast live, all of these things that were about to be done to us, whatever. Think about how we could have, saved some of those people. Like, they make an argument that is dangerously near to that. Now, not even dealing with the counterfactual nature of it, right? Not even dealing with that. I'm sitting here reading the book thinking, so you guys think that if you just showed up with some cameras next to some white people in the South who are in control of their own community, who are in control of the distribution, not only of wealth, but the distribution of social control, who have the ability to violently back that up, right? Because even King says in Where Do We Go From Here, right? That we have to deal with white people because they have this quote unquote fanatical right wing that wouldn't hesitate to kill all of us off, right? End quote. That's a direct quote from Dr. King, right? So you're telling me that you think having some phones it's gonna stop that? You think what, Emmett Till would not have been lynched if there was some phones? Don't you think those people would have just killed you and then taken Emmett Till anyway, right? I mean, so the optimism is in the context of not only the role that they play, but they clearly wrote this book when there was some, victories being done, Ahmaud Arbery, et cetera, et cetera. But it just shows how, context can be a real, which would it be, right? And the context that they're coming from makes you feel good, but it doesn't lead to the real harsh critique of the society that we would expect a Ivy League PhD educated Dr. Hill, who is known as a leftist, who's known as a strong, person, we would expect him to do. But again, I think, you have a case of a social role plus fear, right? And these two things have created this environment where Taylor can write what she wrote for the New Yorker and disappoint you, and Hill and Brewster can write what they write here. That again, I have to now critically assess, because as responsibility as a media scholar, I can't just ignore entire bodies of work because they don't fit my very popular argument. But Diallo, I'm going to be quiet now for literally 5 minutes because I want to hear you talk.
You got to unmute yourself, though.
Well, I have been using social media to try to articulate, Black radical politics and advocate for socialism and Pan-African revolution since I first got onto social media. And I don't overestimate its value and impact. And literally prior to getting on social media, I was around, the hood in Kansas City, Missouri, using stencils and spray paint to promote the same ideas. So what technology does, all it ever has done throughout history is allow people to do more efficiently what they've already been doing. If you give a caveman, a brutish imperialist, a sword or a musket versus a machine gun, it's not going to humanize him. It's just going to make it more efficient. If you give a chattel slave just a satchel to pick cotton versus an industrial turbine, that doesn't change his condition. In fact, we found that technology in relationship to chattel slavery entrenched the system even more as new technologies emerged. And I'm going to quote, I don't like quoting him as much as I used to, Dr. Claude Anderson. Claude Anderson said, racism has always held us in place, and technology would steamroll over us. So we're never really in a position to take advantage of new technologies because of the institutional limitations on what Africans are able to do or even think and contemplate and imagine, as we were earlier talking about the Democrats versus Republicans. So when a new technology comes, every single time, everyone has forgotten about remember the technology gap? We were fighting to fill in the technology gap. And then came STEM and the crazed hysteria around we need STEM education, and our children can't even read poetry or color in books anymore. They have to do coding day and night. So, this is just, it's crazy to me that anyone that could claim to be an African leftist or an African scholar could really try to oversell. And I say that as someone who aggressively uses social media for my own personal and our collective best interests, as best as I know how, and it's gotten away from me because I can't even keep up. People always tell you need to get on TikTok, you need to make reels. I'm like, I've gone as far as I can go. If I get one more gray hair in my beard, I'm gonna just log off forever. So I'm glad that this is being called out and that these sheepdogs for technological inherent progressiveness and the inherent positive potential of technology are being exposed. I really appreciate that, and because it definitely needs to be. And I say that as a utilizer, a prolific utilizer of social media for my own purposes. It's greatly limited in what it can do. And the flip side of that, our enemies and oppressors have proven much more effective at using this and monopolizing the technology and using the technology to subvert any positive, mass critical thought or critical mass movements. They've used technology to subvert that and create more reactionary, right-wing and racist movements.
So
What
just real quick. Sorry, just real quick. I just want to thank Niambi and Nathaniel for joining and welcome, and encourage others to also like, share, subscribe, and join the channel as well, and support what we're trying to do. Go ahead, Geechee.
There was a point of the book that I guess personally I got interested in and kind of emotionally connected to when they was talking about the Ahmaud Arbery situation and having videos and putting out videos, and that like directly threw me into my personal situation when my comrade was murdered. There was a video from a house, and the person who had the video wasn't comfortable giving us the video. They said, well, we'll give it to the police. So they trusted the state. It was like, we'll give it to the police and you can get it from them with a lawyer or whatever. And then so in that part, having videos to use to organize and put out ahead of the state or ahead of trying to get a FOIA and all these other things, I guess that made me think about, some things of like, okay, yes, having a phone to record certain situations gives you, I don't know if it gives you much leverage in court per se, but it gives you more leverage for public opinion and being able to like get ahead of what's going to happen. I don't know.
Can I speak to something about this? I have this book. I used to keep it on my coffee table called Without Sanctuary. And it's literally a book of detailing of lynching photography. Their atrocities have always been well documented in whatever literature is available at that time. You go out and get this book without it's the lynching photography in America. They put lynching photos on postcards. They were selling jars of African people's genitals and ears and noses in formaldehyde. It wasn't that the technology, the photography that was available at the time, their atrocities are well documented, and simply documenting the atrocities and having the technology to expose their atrocity. Vietnam was one of the most well recorded conflicts in history, with video, audio, and literary coverage day to day. That was the very first satellite war where they had satellite communications. The atrocities were known from and then we just now getting the My Lai massacre understood. People like Chuck D celebrating Colin Powell, and his mama named him Colin because she knew he was going to be full of shit, as Dale Jones said. Colin Powell made his career by covering up the My Lai massacre and other atrocities. We have way too much history, from the phonograph to the printing press. You know, the first book written on American history, The Fall of it escapes me, by Father de las Casas. Read that book, The Conquest of Mexico. There was a detailed journalistic personal account of the atrocities of the Native Americans, from the mutilation, murder, cannibalism, systematic rape, and kidnapping. That was well documented. I don't know why they think us documenting, as Dr. Mackey said, the bugger got no shame. Simply having the technology to document, it was more so, it came on the heels, like what you said, the low tech and the no tech, where the people in the streets are the real problems. When I was walking through the south side of Chicago and all the storefronts were boarded up, that did more to bring justice for like Brother Arbery, Floyd, Laquan here in Chicago. The people on the street, the low tech and the no tech activities did so much more. Simply exposure. I got bookshelves and bookshelves using every form of technology. I got cassette tapes under my desk. I got to digitize. Their atrocities are well documented. They get off on the documentation. You know, our oppressors collect and hold to this documentation. So I think we oversell that exposure way too much.
Brother Kenyatta, I appreciate what you're saying. I'll tell you what Hill and Brewster argue. They hear you, but what they argue in this book is that the democratization of this tech, the fact that any teenage girl has this tech, right, and can document and broadcast a black man being killed by police, right? They believe that is the major difference between this and any other point in I guess human history.
Dr. Burroughs, can I interrupt real quick? I want to, because I think I have highlighted in my notes a perfect example of how they do what you're describing. I haven't read the book closely enough to conclude that this is what in fact is happening, but it suggests to me that this is what they're doing, and it's very slick. Quote, the democratization of technology means that now there is greater access for all people, including those who use pictures and messages to stand against racial justice or to beat back progress. The persistent rush of the persistent rush of images that has replaced reading can also force upon us a rigid presentism. We don't stop to receive the news and react to it. We drink it in as if from a rehose. This might be a problem in my
water hose. Yeah,
a water hose, right?
Water hose, yeah.
Trained by technological impulse to discard and move on. Even the act of repetition is suspect. It can reinforce, yes, but it can also dilute. What shocks the text is messed up here. But my point is what I was trying to highlight is that they talk about the democratization of the technology, and they show that both sides can use it, but then conclude this section that I'm referring to with the more optimistic potential of its use, so that, again, they can account for, to a certain extent, what Diallo is raising, but then bring us back to the ultimate point that they're making, that with this new technology, we have an opportunity here. Is that fair? What do you think
That is
about
a
that?
very fair assessment of the book, and I want to talk about some things that the book does well. I think the semiotics, if I have that pronounced correctly, they do very well for the audience, because it was Dr. Ball who introduced me to this concept, semiotics. I just want to point that out as well. It is a study of images and images as symbols, etc. They do a very good job of that. They also do a very good job of contextualizing how African Americans have always used technology. I mean, they even go as far back as talking about Frederick Douglass and his very purposeful use of photographs, and how he'd always be photographed in a certain way, and why. I mean, there've been whole books written about Frederick Douglass and photographs, and how he used the media of the day, right? So they do an excellent job of contextualizing all of that. Now, I'm going to point out, a Todd Steven Burroughs pet peeve. Since I've pointed out many things that Dr. Ball has taught me, one of the things about one of my pet peeves is that, of course, they somehow miss the whole Black radical tradition of using media. Whether it's the Black Panther Party newspaper, or whether it's Radio Free Dixie. Somehow they missed that. They didn't go down that road for some reason. I don't know. It might be lack of space. I really don't know. But anyway, but like I said, they have a careful construction that puts these images into context, and even the fact that they transcribe, for instance, what had happened to Ahmaud Arbery, and compare that kind of white narration to D.W. Griffith and Birth of a Nation, right? So they do a very good job of doing that, and so there's a lot in here that media scholars will use. But again, I need to point out things that are not in the book, so that we could have the kind of intellectual discussion here that I think our audience deserves.
Well, shout out to Dead Man Animations. Thank you very much for the super chat. This is a great discussion. I highly recommend the book Dark Matters by Simone Brown, as it highlights a lot of these concepts around technology and surveillance. I appreciate the suggestion. I have not read this, so
Brother Taka,
I appreciate the suggestion.
I know Jared mentioned it, but could you go into some of the statements you made about Rodney, especially towards the end of your article? You talk about, could this be the golden era of activism, this whole pixel thing?
Well, again, I mean, I read these books in the afterglow of the book I read on Rodney, and I kind of want to mention that book, if you just give me a second, because I thought it was a good book. This new Walter Rodney biography that's been written
By the brother in London.
Yeah,
White guy?
if that's him, a revolutionary for our time.
I think that's him.
A revolutionary for our time. Now, I was recovering from that book, and that book to me is very significant because I didn't know, for instance, that the brother took the entire decade.
I'm not endorsing the source, by the way, or the platform. I'm just showing.
Right.
Yeah.
I was surprised to know that the brother spent the entire decade of the 70s just trying to be financially stable, just trying to look for a damn job. And I was shocked at that. And that book, triggered, I think that's the current terminology we use now. That book triggered something in me because I remember going to a Walter Rodney conference in Washington, D.C., and watching some, major scholars, who in between bites of brie, and I'm being creative here. There wasn't literally brie there, but there could have been, where they talked about, say, well, we told him not to go back there. And, I just had that flash of anger, like, okay, wait, this man died trying to organize us, and we sitting here all comfortable in our academic conference, and you're talking about, we told him not to go there, and we all sitting here benefiting from this, right? That was my first anger. Now, of course, as I now got older and I looked at all the things that Rodney could have contributed, I now have a question. Okay, well, maybe maybe those folks who knew him and knew the concept was right. I don't know, right? But Rodney, but this book triggered all these kind of things in me. And when I saw this quote on technology, I knew that I was going to use that quote in this review. I even marked it off. I put it in my inbox. Use this quote for the review. And so I literally wrote the review around that quote because I so badly wanted to use that quote. Why? Because Rodney is an example of grassroots intellectual development, right? He's somebody who was determined to be a top rated intellect and to do the organizing, because we have to look at the fact, because the Rodney book points out that groundings and how Europe underdeveloped Africa from a hardcore scholarly historian perspective are considered polemics. And so Rodney, just to prove to the hardcore historians and the hardcore academicians that he was more than just a polemicist, that's why he went and published his doctoral dissertation later on. He just wanted to show people, like, look, I know how to do all of that stuff that you value, but I'm trying to organize the people here and I'm trying to gain revolution in this world.
By the way, that's funny. This is by I'm not in any way attempting a comparison, but when I was trying to complete my dissertation, that's what my committee said of mine, that it was that I was engaging in polemics, and I ended up defining the term and putting it at the top of the dissertation and proudly proclaiming that that's in fact what I was doing, because all that is basically saying is that you're making an actual argument. You're picking a side. It's meant in the popular context, cultural context, to convey a lack of rigor and a lack of intellectualism. But polemics is really, you're just taking a side. It's not that you're making an unprincipled or unsubstantiated or a scholarly argument. It's just acknowledging your bias and claiming it. And academia often wants to pretend like it's not doing that. But anyway,
we should not be swapping Maryland stories. I mean, Geechee Diallo, you're looking at the first black male and the second black male to graduate University of Maryland's journalism school, and I think there's only been one black male since, and they weren't like us. But I'll tell you what I was told during my comps, Dr. Ball. I don't know whether I've ever told you this. I was told by the black male who recruited me during my comps, while I'm defending my comps, he says to me in front of the whole committee, I did not recruit you here to talk all of this radical stuff.
Mm.
And so the point that I'm making with Rodney is that Rodney was committed to our liberation, and being a scholar, being a high level scholar, was just a vehicle to do that. So again, he wrote an outstanding research dissertation, but when he chose to write as a scholar, when he got his PhD, when he chose to write as a scholar, he wrote with the idea of liberating a people. And see, to go with what the theme of what we've done for this discussion, we have people who yearn for that. Clearly, they yearn for that. They yearn to be in the social role of a Walter Rodney, of a John Henry Clark, of a Lerone Bennett. They yearn for that, but the needs of their social role, their very well, paid, well, structured social role, fights against that. And that's one of the conflicts we're going to have, because see, we're going to have a situation now where people like Dr. Taylor and Marc Lamont Hill, and again, I respect them, I admire them. They're people I admire. But we're going to have a point of view soon where, because when these Generation Z people come up, right? Because see, at the Black Writers Conference, I forget who said it, it might have been Jelani Cobb. They said the Generation Z is even afraid to take our positions because they want tenure and they want to be on MSNBC and all of this. So we're looking at the point now where Marc Lamont Hill and Tara and them are going to be viewed as the wild-eyed Walter Rodney in comparison to what is coming behind us.
But I mean, what could be expected? So I don't know the context of Cobb's comment, but I mean, what could be expected if all of the popular work that youngsters are being exposed to is making a soft argument, never introducing them to politics to their left? What else could they conclude? Of course, they're going to make it more centrist and more conservative. But anyway, look. Fellas, I know we got to conclude here, wrap it up here in a minute, but let me give all of you, any last comments, questions, or whatever you would want to get to before we dip for the day.
I mean, because you read Leo's book, I'm curious what's your like conclusion of that. I don't know if Jared feel. I mean, he's been writing a whole bunch about all these Black revolutionaries, and I met him at an event in London, but I didn't read his book either. So
I haven't read the Rodney book, so and I don't think I've read any of this author's writing. So
I mean, my quick 1 minute version of it is that it's a very well documented book. It very much deals more with facts than interpretation. I think he understands as a white guy that it's not really his role to interpret Walter Rodney as it is to explain what Walter Rodney himself was trying to do. I think he does an excellent job explaining Walter Rodney's optimism and later disappointment with Tanzania. I think he does a good job explaining why Walter Rodney was considered this wild-eyed revolutionary who couldn't get back into his own country to teach. I think he does a good job. I mean, just the facts on Walter Rodney is enough. And I think he did a good job putting that together. And I think he did a good job with the primary source material, where when he transcribed those lectures he did at University of Hamburg, he did the comparisons of how he wrote the books he wrote. I mean, I think he did a very good job. I mean, I'm not one of these people that won't read white scholars when they're doing something Black, because I think white scholars have learned a lot on how to approach Black topics. And I think in terms of this book, it's a positive thing. I'm glad he wrote the book.
Right on. Diallo, you got any last thoughts? I saw somebody in the comments was asking how they can reach you beyond at Diallo Kenyatta.
You can come on to the South Side, Bronzeville, where I dwell. I'm out here. I be outside. But yeah, you can add Diallo. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, DialloKenyatta.com. I'm very accessible. I'm outside. But just one more thing I want to talk on, since we started off talking about democracy and we talking about Democratic Party democracy in American politics, and now we're talking about social media as a democratic or democratizing element. Democracy is not participation. Democracy is power. You can have TikTok, just because you're able to go on here and create these accounts and post your views, that is not democracy. Democracy is where they're saying, where Elon Musk with his nonsense, terms and conditions, establishing the terms and conditions, writing and having intellectual ownership of the IP of the algorithms. That's where the democracy is. There is no democracy in simple participation, whether that's just voting or whether that's just creating an account to share your views and ideas and spread them across the world, even if you go viral. Democracy is not participation. The etymology of the word democracy is power. If you don't have power, if you don't control the means of production, you are not part of the democracy. You are a participant. You are what they call a peasant, a serf, or whatever other terms they have in that. You're just a participant. You're not a controller. So that's all I want to say in terms of democratic technology. This technology is monopolistic. It is not democratic. But anyway, still like, share, subscribe, and join. As the brother says, on top of
and buy the merch, right?
Oh, absolutely, get your merch.
Buy the merch, yes. And on top of all that, understanding that the struggle continues.
No question. Buy your mug of freedom. Is in other words, get your T-shirt of liberty. All right, good people. Appreciate all of you as always. Thank you, Dr. Burroughs, for coming through again, and we look forward to your forthcoming work on Mumia and more. Shout out to you, Geechee and Diallo. Appreciate you, and all the remixers. Appreciate you as well. And as Fred Hampton used to say, peace, because we know you're willing to fight for it. Catch you next time here. That Mix What I Like. Peace, everybody. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.